It is now my pleasure to get tonight's reading started by introducing our first reader, Lin Salisbury. After a nearly 30-year absence from school, Lin returned to study creative writing at the University of Minnesota, earning her degree in 2007. While her focus then and in this program has been creative nonfiction, she also writes fiction and has participated in fiction classes at the Loft and Split Rock Arts program. Her work has appeared in a variety of publications. Lin is Community Relations Manager from Barnes & Noble and sets up many author readings, so I'm delighted to have her on this side of the podium as the writer, not as the organizer. Lin is the mother of 5 adult children and the grandmother of 5, and we are very pleased to have several generations of her family here with her tonight. Please welcome Lin Salisbury.
First of all, I want to thank the Loft, the mentors, and Jared Santek for this wonderful program and opportunity. I also want to thank my fellow mentees. It's been a great year. A special thanks to my husband for coming to all the readings and for his growing support of my literary endeavors. My reading tonight is an excerpt from my memoir, Crazy for You. It is the story of my grandmother Ardina's institutionalization, her subsequent death, and my quest to understand her story. The piece I am reading includes the voices of my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, and many of my aunts. I initially became interested in Ardina's story as family history. When tragedy struck my own life and pressed me into a deep depression, I became interested in her story as part of my family's mental health history. I began my research from this place, a place of brokenness and desperation. Ardina was hanging sheets on the line the day they came for her. I imagine they billow and snap in the breeze while white clouds scud by in the sky overhead. She heard the gravel pop and crackle as a squad car pulled up the drive. The door of the car squeaked as the sheriff opened it, and with some effort stepped out. Would you like to go for a ride, Ardina? We'll take you someplace where you can have a little rest. Without argument, Ardina climbed in the back seat with the nurse, and the car drove slowly down the drive, the white sheets behind them waving their goodbye. She'd left her husband, Henry, the year before after he'd hit her in a drunken rage, just up and took off with the 6 children, vowing Henry'd never have the chance to hit her again. They lived on relief in a home provided for by the county. There was rarely enough food, and what relief provided was often rank and unpalatable. She wasn't fond of cooking or eating, really, and would forget that the children needed to be fed until Virginia, her oldest, would remind her, or until Peggy's groaning stomach would rouse her to forage through the cupboards. Sometimes the children picked wild onions from the field across the street and made sandwiches. There were days that Ardina had to will herself to rise, her limbs like stone pillars pinning her to the bed. Others, she felt as though she had the soul of a wild animal, feral and skittish. She wasn't like the other women in Gettysburg, South Dakota. She liked to play cards and dance. She painted her fingernails, and she wore makeup. Once, her sister-in-law gave her a bolt of red fabric, thinking that Ardina might make curtains for her dining room, cheer the place up a bit, but instead, Ardina made the girls matching dresses. Whenever Ardina felt agitated, she'd take the children and walk the rutted dirt roads that led out of town, the girls in their red dresses, cutting across the countryside like a red sash. They walked everywhere. The townspeople began to refer to Ardina and her children as the Red Ramblers. One night, feeling shiftless and bleak, she decided to go into town to listen to music at the dance hall and brought the children with her. She lined them up on the bench outside, oldest to youngest, instructing them to stay put while she went inside for a little while. The children listened to the shrill laughter and loud music that bled from the swinging doors as dusk gave way to darkness. Slowly, like dominoes, they began to fall asleep, one against the other. It wasn't long after this that the townspeople drafted a petition to convince Henry that his estranged wife was unbalanced, unfit to care for the children, and should be committed. He agreed. In a note to the authorities, he wrote, "It was very necessary to get my wife Ardina to the hospital because she would mistreat our 6 little children quite often in the way of beating them all with a broom and overloading them with too hard work. Also, she would tramp all over town all day and night with them. Then, when there was a dance in town, she'd go take them there to watch others dance and listen to music until way into the morning hours, which was too much for any child to stand, with hardly ever any cooked meals, only lunches, never real substantial eats what children need. Now about the threatening. She used to tell me when she'd get mad that I feel like cutting you all to pieces, but she of course never picked up a knife or axe to do so. But I was always afraid that while I was away working, she might hurt the children in some frightful manner, or even end their little lives because she'd get so mad so easy over nothing. Now one more thing that may help you some, and may be her trouble, that causes her present condition. She never had her monthly sickness regular, so she may have some female trouble. The children ranged in age from 9 months to 10 years old when their mother was committed to the Yankton State Hospital. The younger children refer to this time as when their mother left. The older children refer to it as when she was taken away. For the older children, the loss of their mother left gaping wounds, raw places in their souls where their mother was torn out. For the younger ones, it left a nameless void, a blank slate where mother should have been. As an adult, my mother acquired 6 letters written by Ardina during the period of her commitment, from October 1937 to July 1943. Henry did not respond to the letters, nor did he allow the children to write to their mother. My mother has read these letters over and over, trying to make sense out of what happened. The first letter in her collection was written in January 1939, 2 years after Ardina's commitment. Dear Hank, how are you and the kids, and why haven't you or the kids wrote? I don't know what to think of it, that you haven't written for so long. I heard from Annie Todd last Thursday, and she said that she saw you in Virginia and you told her you were all right. What time do you kids go to bed? If you get your lessons soon enough in the evening, you kids, I wish you would go to bed at 8 o'clock instead of 9. Or maybe you do anyway. Be careful not to be sick. I saw in the Potter County about the school being quarantined for measles, and then that sleeping sickness in Gettysburg in the 7th and 8th grades, and that is worse than any measles. Do you know any of them that are sick? And do be careful that you don't get it. Annie subscribed to The Farmer's Wife for me. I got 2 copies right away. I sure was glad to get it. It has been quite cold here lately. Do you kids take lunches to school? I thought you probably were, because it's too far to come home at noon and also too cold. I went to the beauty parlor here this afternoon, had my hair shampooed and marcelled, also had my fingers manicured and polished. Annie sent me 2 picture snapshots of you kids. I don't know when they were taken, but they are real good. One is of all you kids, and the other is of Ramona by herself. I sure was surprised and glad to get them. Now do hurry up and send that $1 bill and package of clothes and things I wanted. And above all, come after me. I'm going to write to Emily tonight. Well, I must close for this time, hoping to hear from you soon. Your wife, Ardina. During the 6 years that Ardina was a resident at Yankton, she also wrote letters to various relatives, imploring them to come for her. Some of the relatives inquired about her well-being, but most did not. The following letter is in response to an inquiry from her sister-in-law. Dear Madame, your letter regarding your sister-in-law Ardina has been received. Ardina gets along nicely here. She is quiet, cooperative, and never gets into difficulties with anyone. We would have no objection whatever to her going home on a trial, provided the Board of Insanity of her county sees fit to issue the order upon application by some of the relatives. We do not hear from her husband. It may be that he is not inclined to take her home. You know, we are sure that before she came, she was unable to look after herself or her family, and he undoubtedly feels he would have the same difficulty with her again. If she recovered completely, we would discharge her outright, but this we cannot do in light of the fact that we do not consider her normal. She continues to use a great deal of rouge, powder, and lipstick. In fact, she keeps pretty well supplied with these things by writing to various concerns for samples. Assure you of our continued interest in your sister's welfare. We are very truly yours. I don't remember when I heard Ardina's story for the first time. I often think of my grandmother, my mother, and I as a pad of paper, the heavy-handed printing on the top sheet, leaving its imprint on the pages beneath. My mother's telling and retelling of the story never varied. Her mother was colorful and unconventional and misunderstood. My mother is loyal beyond reason. She blamed the townspeople who drafted the petition for her mother's commitment. She considered her father a victim as well. Audrey, my aunt, was only 9 months old when her mother was taken to Yankton, and 6 when she died. Her only memory of Ardina is at her funeral. She remembers seeing a woman with white hair lying in a casket with a shock of red at the tip of each finger. That attracted my attention because I was not used to that, she said. Seeing a corpse, I asked? No, fingernail polish. When I talked to my Aunt Moni about Ardina, she began with a preface. I was only 2.5 when she left. I don't remember anything. Do you remember why she was committed, I asked. I wonder whether it wasn't postpartum. Within 3 years, she'd had her last 3 children. I struggled with postpartum myself. Do you think your father had regrets, I asked, as we closed. Yes, he told my daughter that he had done something awful to her grandmother, and he couldn't forget it. My Aunt Peggy tells me that her memories may not really be her memories. They may be my mother's. My mother is her siblings' collective consciousness. I was surprised to learn that my daddy was a drunkard, Peggy said. Virginia remembered the time period before Ardina left Henry. She and my mother were often sent to the pool hall to retrieve their drunken father, practically carrying him home, the weight of a grown man juggled between 2 young girls. My mother remembers Ardina's favorite magazine, Red Book, Candy Bar, Powerhouse, and Color, Red. She spent most of her childhood wishing time away. If only this day, this week, this year would pass. 6 years after being committed, Ardina was still writing home. Her letters became more desperate, and she continued to reach out to other family members for their help in securing her release. Ardina wrote this last letter home only 4 days before her death. Dear Hank, how are you and the kids, and why haven't you written? I haven't heard from any of the relatives all week long. What are the kids doing now? I suppose they are having a good time during their vacation. Well, Lena has not come for me yet, so I haven't gotten there, but I am hoping she will. I would like to get there by the end of this week so that I would be home for my birthday and our wedding anniversary. And if I don't, you shall send me $1 or a present and write to me, and have the kids write to me also. Well, there's nothing more to say, so I will close for now. I sure hope I get home pretty soon. Write, and have the kids write also. Your wife, Ardina. But no one came that day or the next. So Ardina tucked away a seam ripper from her job in the sewing room. For the next few nights, she carefully loosened all the screws around the window grate. 4 nights later, on July 25th, 1943, on her 40th birthday and 19th wedding anniversary, Ardina placed pillows under her bedding so that when the attendants checked her room at rounds, they would not suspect anything. She removed the grate, climbed out onto the window ledge, shuffled toward the drain pipe, and fell to her death. At last, Ardina was free.